Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast.
We are the Karwells.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah, and we are, as you know, Airbnb interior designers and investors. Well, welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us today. We have Alex Jarbo on the show. Hello, Alex. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are super excited to kind of dive into the development side of Airbnb and short-term rentals today. So we're super excited to pick his brain. But as always, as you all know, we start each episode with an Airbnb horror story. So we will let Alex break the ice with one of his horror stories. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so this happened, I want to say a year ago now, but it feels like it happened a couple weeks ago. So I had a guest check into our very first property we ever developed. And they had checked in at check-in time, which was like 3:00. And I get like a call at like 11 saying that like the place was like an absolute mess when they checked in, that there was dog hair all over the place. And the lady had said she was pregnant, so she had like thrown up because she was like super sensitive to that stuff. And that my cleaning crew had up till there had never, I mean, they didn't, but they'd never missed a cleaning ever in the 5 years I was using them. And so that seemed a little interesting, especially because they called me at like 11 p.m. and they had checked at 3. So I had called my cleaning lady. They had already called like Airbnb and gotten their money back. And essentially like Airbnb, I mean, my business essentially runs on Airbnb and VRBO, but Airbnb had like taken my superhost status away and then blacklisted the property for a couple weeks. Or at least they said they were going to for a couple weeks. So they had left, and then I had my cleaning lady, a cleaning manager, the cleaning crew go up there, and she was like, they cooked a full meal in here, and they brought a dog with them. So we have a camera that faces like all of the parking area, an outdoor camera. So I checked the camera, and they brought a dog with them. So they they stayed 6-7 hours. If I had to guess, it was probably just too expensive for them and they just wanted their money back. But they cooked a full meal, stayed there essentially a full day, and then blatantly lied about it. And then I had to essentially send that video to Airbnb and get everything, I guess, reinstated and stuff. But that was fun.
Wait, so Airbnb ended up siding with you, and they you had enough proof that
I mean, I had proof that what they did. So they actually got me they charged them again, which I didn't even know they could do, but they charged them for the full stay.
It sounds like these people just wanted to throw a birthday party somewhere and then dip out.
Yeah, right. And I don't know, I don't allow for one night stays, so maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, honestly. Well, I mean, in that scenario, thank God that you had the system set in place that you did. I mean, if you didn't have the camera, if you didn't have the proof, you would have been out that money. And then
No, that's a part of most of my properties didn't have cameras outside of that one, and they obviously now all do.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson I learned too. I went through a similar situation and didn't have a camera and had no proof, and afterward I was like screaming. I mean, I still scream from the mountaintops. I'm like, cameras everywhere. Like, do not miss that step.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that guests sometimes get so touchy about cameras. And I'm like, one, yes, it protects the host, but it also protects the guest in certain situations as well. So I don't understand. Nobody's filming you inside the home. Don't worry about that.
Not.
Like, so I don't know why people get so touchy about them, but some people really do.
Yeah, for sure. I have a camera on the exterior of the back of one of my properties that has a hot tub on it. And I would say probably 20% of the time, people will look at the camera, because a lot of times we'll look at what the guests are using in the backyard, right? Like, are they using the kayaks? Are they using the paddle boards? Like, what are they using the most? Because it's good insight for how we proceed on the next lake houses that we do.
Absolutely.
And I would say about 20% of the time, our guests will end up like putting a towel or something over the camera that looks at the hot tub. And I'm like, that's such a good solution. Like, if you want the privacy while you're there, by all means,
just block it. Yeah, I'm not gonna complain about it, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to watch it anyway. So, right. So, yeah, it's been a good solution. But yeah, I mean, anyone listening, if you don't have a camera at your Airbnb, for the love of God, run, go get one.
Sure. It's absolutely worth the expense. It'll save you so much money in the long run.
Yes. So for our listeners who do not know who you are, why don't you kind of start off with giving us kind of a background of how you got into short-term rentals and your short-term rental strategy currently?
Yeah, so I had originally, going way back. So I originally had served in the Marine Corps for 4.5 years, and then sort of towards the end of my enlistment, I had like a year left. I just had decided that I just didn't want to reenlist. And so I started really reading a lot of different investing books, whether it be on crypto, stock market, real estate. Real estate really caught my eye just because of, I guess, the control that you could have over it, like with forced appreciation, especially if you own the property and stuff. And so got really deep into real estate in general. And I originally had signed up for a flipping mentorship when I was still in the Marine Corps. And what I realized was the person who had run that flipping mentorship was all their long-term wealth, just by talking to them, was tied in short-term rentals. And this was back in 2015, 16-ish. And yeah, I just that really caught my eye, especially when I saw what the returns could be compared to like a long-term rental, or if I was flipping a house, which is why I was a part of that mentorship. So I got him on the phone, and he had actually helped me decide on Asheville, North Carolina back in 2016 or 15. And the day I got out of the Marine Corps, I moved here, got my real estate license, and then started to look for a short-term rental to purchase. And at that time, everything was either out of my price range, or it wouldn't have done, and anything that was in my price range that was already built wouldn't have done well as a short-term rental. It would have done well maybe as a long-term rental, but it wouldn't have done well as like a unique property that would do well as short-term rentals. And back then in 2016, you could put anything on the Airbnb VRBO, and it would have absolutely killed it. But now that's obviously going away, and people are looking for these more unique stays or something unique about the property or the stay that they're staying at. So I decided to build. It was about 4 to 6 months of actually looking and getting frustrated, outbid on the properties that I didn't get. That I was like, okay, I'm gonna build my first short term. I'm gonna build my first real estate investment, essentially, and that was an 800 square foot A-frame that we own to this day. And then one turned into two turned into four. Brought on some investor capital, and now just today, like right now, we're developing 24, and we plan on purchasing some like bigger projects as well that we're working on.
That's incredible. For one, just like starting with an A-frame, that's like a goal of mine, is to have an A-frame down the road.
Yeah.
That's like
they're cash cows for sure.
Yeah, and it's like a novelty to own as well. You know,
Right.
It's like you never get sick of staying in an A-frame. I don't know that I'd want to live in one, but for short-term rentals, It's just
we built that first one out as a house. Like it has a full kitchen, full bathroom, everything. It's like if a couple wanted to live in it, they 100% could. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. So
amazing. I want one. So a question. Well, one, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Emily's entire family is a military family. So.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they are. I was gonna say that too. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, so we appreciate that. But two, I mean, we've personally dabbled in almost everything Airbnb related, right? We've tried arbitrage, we've purchased, we've invested with others, we've raised capital, we've done all of that, but we have not dabbled in ground up construction at all. And there's a huge intimidation factor that goes into it. I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong when you're sourcing property.
Absolutely.
And then there's also a lot that can go wrong because you've got this huge, long timeline that you are managing for months before you're actually seeing any return. So can you like kind of talk through some of those obstacles? Like, when you first started, how did you decide on what piece of land you were going to build on? Did it take the amount of time that it was going to take to build that property? Or, what was that process like?
We came in definitely within our timeline. Then that was prior to COVID. I mean, definitely things slowed down the couple of years that we were going in and out of lockdowns. But my thing is, when it comes to development, what I tell everyone and my students is like the access to the property is the most important thing when it comes to land. You can knock out a lot of different properties that you're looking at and X out a lot of different properties that are on the market just based off of access alone. You don't want your guests to be going up. A lot of times they're coming like new to the city, right? They're a lot of times they're driving in at night, so they don't know the area that well as well. And you don't want them to be driving like 30 minutes up a gravel road, and especially here in the mountains, and they lose reception or something. And you don't want them to be annoyed before they even come to your property. So what I tell people is you want you want to think of the whole guest experience, not just at the property. And like you said, you offer kayaks and everything, and that's one thing that I teach, is that the access to the property is one of the most important things, especially like, again, when you're in the more rural areas, and people aren't really used to driving up a gravel road. That's crucial. So that's number one. And then number two is obviously just having a good team. I'm a developer, so I don't have my GC license. I hire my own GCs out. But yeah, I mean, access is probably number one when it comes to that. And it's less dangerous as well for your guests, especially when you're like in the more less seasonal parts of the like winter and stuff.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, even like with the properties that we purchase here in Michigan, they're not ground up, right? But there is that factor of like 60% of the houses that we tour, you're going down like 3 miles of gravel road, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, yeah, same thing with purchasing. I mean, that's the same thing. It's like, you'll see a beautiful property here that's perched up on a hilltop, and you're like, yeah, but what does the road look like? Like, everybody wants a mountain view here, but nobody wants to drive up a mountain.
That's so true. Oh yeah, we did a big long band trip 2 summers ago, and there were several like remote camping spots that we went to that were like up the mountain, and we'd get halfway up and it'd be like 10 p.m. and we were like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, for sure. Right. A bear pops up or something.
So true.
That actually is a possibility up in Alpena.
Yeah, for sure.
I like looked it up. They were like, yeah, watch out for bears. And I was like, oh, that'll be something I need to let my guests
that's a thing
know.
here. Yeah,
good to know. Southern Michigan doesn't quite have that. But it's super impressive to me that back in 2015 and 2016, because like you said, like you could throw up anything on Airbnb and you were going to make money on it at that point in time, but that you kind of waited and weeded through everything and ended up falling into development because you couldn't find something that you thought was up to that standard. So I guess, did you have anybody other than the person that you talked to that had their money in short-term rentals that you saw that was doing developing that kind of inspired you to take that step? Or was it just that you had gone through every other avenue?
Not when I started. I mean, there's so much good content out there now on YouTube and just with like courses that you can purchase. But yeah, at that time I had built, and I don't necessarily do this anymore, but I was like, okay, it's a permanent foundation stick-built house, meaning that I could sell it to someone if it doesn't work out. So I always say, think of exit in mind in whatever business you get in. It's a little bit morbid to think that like your business might end one day, but you are protecting yourself even further without completely jumping into something when you think of the exit in mind. So at that time, you could underwrite a property as a long-term rental and rent it out as a short-term rental. And if it didn't work out, you could do the long-term rental route, just put a long-term renter in there. Or if that does, now, like with construction costs being a little bit higher, and same thing with like finding good people, the exit is just selling the property to, say, like a couple or a family if they want to live in something like that. So yeah, there wasn't any content out there on that topic, and that's actually one of the reasons why I created my course that I did. But I just built a couple exits in mind just in case that it wouldn't rent out as a short-term rental.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of the beauty of short-term rentals. I mean, there's like, when you look at your North Star strategy, right? Of course it's short-term rentals. You're going to, maximize your cash flow. You're going to have this great experience. You're going to be booked all the time. The legalities are going to be in your favor. But at the end of the day, even if those things don't work out, you then can look at midterm rentals. You then can look at long-term rentals. You then can look at selling the property. Like, you've got so many fail safes on the back side and like a standard, single family home Airbnb that it's like, it is risky, but at the same time, there's so much that you can do with it. There's so much flexibility in real estate nowadays that you can make it work one way or another.
Absolutely.
100%. Emily, is it my question or your question?
I can go. So I was kind of checking out your website, and from what I saw, you kind of target areas that are like 20 to 30 minutes outside of like metro areas because they're within driving distance. So I guess, why did you decide, or how did you end up falling on targeting those areas?
Yeah, so that came out of necessity of Asheville itself does not allow short-term rentals. There's 2,600 in the city, but obviously they're operating illegally. And I've done the short-term rentals without blah, 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 like with operating them outside of the rules of the county and the city. But with me tying investor capital in, and with me signing on loans and like tying my own money into it, I felt that it was a little bit safer to stay. You can do short-term rentals in the county here, but you can't do them in the city. And so what I did was I'm a licensed real estate agent. I pulled up my MLS map of the city, and I was like, I'm just going to purchase property right on the edge of the city. And that strategy, without us really planning for it, that helped us really during COVID, because people left the metro cities during COVID and went to more rural locations. And that's sort of always, I think that's going to stay and continuing to stay, is like properties that are being booked out. It's sort of like off the beaten path a little bit, where people can still drive to the city if they want that experience, but they can also stay in a little bit more rural area, as long as they have some sort of like basic amenities or whatever amenities they're comfortable with. So that's why we did it out of necessity, but now that's our strategy from now on, whatever market we get into.
Yeah.
And the land's cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah. The land is cheaper, and staycations are definitely in.
For sure. You get some sort of a good internet connection, because a lot of people are still working from home, then you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, fortunate for you, you were like set up shop for COVID to hit. All of our properties were like literally in the heart of VFW.
Oh yeah.
It was a struggle for like a good.
We did midterm rentals for a couple months, just like when things really locked down, like March in 2020 and stuff.
Yep. That's what we shifted to as well. I mean, ours were so close to so many hospitals that we were able to get some nurses in there, but it was like not the cash flow that we were anticipating, because we made our properties go live like March 6th.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Perfect timing.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where you're like, spend every single penny that you've saved up for the last year, and you just like watch the world come down, and you're like,
yeah, we had a real estate closing February 26th on a construction loan with a budget that was done prior to COVID. And we're like, we sat on that for a couple of years before we even started, but we obviously finally started. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun shifting your company in a day or two.
Yeah.
Launching on March 6th, that was a lot of optimism, I think, based on what.
Yeah, my wife and I actually. So my wife and I got married, and then we lived separately for 6 months until everything was situated here. And she moved here March 20th, like to Asheville. So like literally the weekend that things went bye.
Yeah, welcome home.
Yeah, welcome here. We can't do anything.
You're trapped in these four walls for the next year.
Right.
Yeah, what an interesting start to marriage. Both Sarah and I got married at the end of 2019, so our whole first year of marriage was all in quarantine. I'm like, if we can make it through that, we are good, guys. We are
yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So now, I mean, you started solo, right? Building these properties, and now you have something where you're pulling capital in from investors, which seems to be kind of the natural progression that investors go through, right? You start on your own, you have proof of concept, you understand the game, and then you bring in people who don't want to understand the game but have the money too. So talk to us about that scaling process, right? I mean, where did you find your investors? How did you develop those relationships? And what does your scaling process look like now?
Yeah, when you're starting to do well, I mean, people in your life take notice. So, and just by talking to friends and family and stuff, I'm pretty open with my finances, like with friends and family. So I'm not a huge fan of honestly dealing with family. That might be just my family. So I gravitated more towards friends, just like military people that I had trusted me, but also I trusted them with my life essentially. So I started with friends and family, friends, and raised. We did one project where I brought on like investor cap, like my buddy's money, just a JV deal, for like $100,000. Put that as a down payment, got a loan on it, blah blah blah, and then moved on to a friend that was local here, that was more like a mentor. Where we did a larger one where he was comfortable putting up like four. It was like in the middle of COVID, surprisingly, where everything exploded in property values, and he sold off a property that he was just breaking even on the mortgage, where he was renting out long term. And we rolled that into like a bigger parcel, like a 15-acre parcel. So it's the first three or four started with friends. And then I really started getting connected with a lot of people just in the multifamily real estate world. Started hopping on podcasts, started writing some like guest blog posts, and started raising capital that way, essentially telling my story this way. And a lot of different really interesting people started to come through. And it got to a point where like banks were like knocking on my door to essentially lend me money, which was like backwards. Like I spent 3 years trying to convince banks on trying to lend on this stuff. And yeah, that was essentially my capital raising process, was honestly getting on a lot of like really interesting podcasts that I was just connected with, just like the hosts that I know. And I'm technically not raising capital right now for my deals, just because we're doing the 24, and I feel like that's enough for like one at a time. And I do plan on getting bigger. I just brought on like one of the biggest GCs in this area. But yeah, that's essentially my process, was just raising capital originally from friends. And then it's the same thing like you just said, proof of concept, me doing it alone, proof of concept, being able to do it with investors using friends' money, and then proof of concept, then use that to raise capital essentially from strangers. Podcasts and just blog posts and stuff really help with that, because it helps establish that trust and that credibility.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the power of social media. it's
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
it's been the thing that has introduced us to every single person we've done business with in this industry, has been through social
Yeah.
media and just making sure that people can see you. Because if people can't see you, they're not, how are they supposed to be aware?
Right.
So yeah, I think that side's brilliant. I also love the proof of concept yourself, and then, extending it to friends, and then extending it beyond that. Because I think, especially having quite a social media following, we see in our comment sections day in and day out, like, I have no money, but I want to do this. And there are ways to get started with no money, right? Like that is
Right.
possible. But
mental arbitrage, everything.
yep,
Right.
it's super possible. But at the end of the day, when you want to talk about, really convincing people to trust you with their money, they want to see that you've got skin in the game, right? So
Absolutely.
so
And you should have that skin in the game. Like you are taking a stranger's money. Like you should treat that money 4 or 5 times like what you're a dollar to me, like from an investor standpoint, that like someone who gave me $1, like I treat that as like $5. So it's like that should be the mindset you have. And it's like
yes.
it might make you a little like you have to have that you have to have that background, because you are taking strangers' money. And worse than that is like you're taking good friends' money as well, so you can't lose that money.
I feel that in my soul.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta take that to heart.
Yeah, we're definitely in the phase right now, Emily and I are, of probably in between where you're at, right? We've had our proof of concept, we've worked with investors, and now we're really starting to understand partnerships between our family, our friends, and investors that we're dealing with. And there is a huge fiduciary responsibility when you are taking on people's capital, because it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, investments are risky, right? So there's like the portion of it where you have to be 100% completely transparent upfront and set those expectations, and have people understand that, like, there is a chance for another COVID, right? There is a chance for an economic downturn. There is a chance for housing crisis. Like, there are all of these variables that I am not in control of. But at the end of the day, I need you to know that I am doing the absolute best with this money that I possibly can. Like, there are no promises
Right.
here, but I promise I'm paying more attention to your money than I'm paying attention to my money at this
For
point.
sure.
So
Absolutely.
so yeah, it really is about building those relationships, and we've seen that proven time and time again. So when you think about your strategy going forward, do you think you'll exclusively stay in the development side of short-term rentals, or do you think you'll ever come over into more of the rehab side?
Oh no, I'm in the rehab side as well. What I like to do though is I like to purchase a property that already has some land attached to it. Where like a good example is we just purchased this beautiful 3,200 square foot log cabin on a horse pasture. Came with 2 horses, which is really cool. I didn't expect that. But it's 5 acres total. And we put maybe 15, 20 grand into rehab, and then probably another 30 grand into furnishings. 5-bedroom house and 5-bedroom log cabin. And so that one's going to be like we're essentially doing a cash out refinance, or at least pulling some of that equity out as a down payment to build more properties. But that's a really cool strategy for anyone who doesn't want to just jump into raw land development, is finding a property that has some land attached to it, where you can sever off some land and build more properties on it. And that's what we're doing with that one. Is we're going to build 5 other cabins on that property. Hope my neighbors aren't listening.
That's a whole nother tangent we could go down as neighbors.
Absolutely.
Well, and kind of the advantage to that as well is you've got the team all set up, right? So it's like, I feel like a lot of investors, when they get into the short-term rental space, they have this mindset like, okay, I want one property in every single state so I can travel to these properties, and
No.
like,
No.
The second, like everyone that I've talked to that gets started has that same mentality, and then like after their first property, they're like, never mind, we're doubling down here so we can travel ourselves to these other places, because just those resources alone, like having that network of people in the area that you specialize in, saves you so much time, so much energy, so much money. And when you're building on a property that you've already set up as a short-term rental, you get to use the cleaners, the maintenance
and
men.
right, exactly. And then you also understand every county is different when it comes to their zoning laws and the type of rules and the permitting process. That's hundreds of hours that you're going to spend doing that. Definitely worth it. I mean, like our first A-frame, just the equity we've built, last time we got it appraised for like 250, 300 grand more than what we built it for. And that's outside of I think that small 800 square foot A-frame cash flows after all bills are paid about 48,000 a year, and it grossed 84,000. So it's like I make my money back 2x like every year, which is crazy.
That's insane. It's insane.
So that's the power of understanding a specific market.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So I was looking at your website, and the cabins that you're like working on currently are so cool. Do you work with like an architect and a designer, and are they all part of your team, or do you decide how you want the properties to look? How does that all work for you?
Yeah, Instagram's my designer. So like I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm on Pinterest a lot, and what I do is if I find so if you look at my website, on the Sargon Investments website, like you said, all the 6 to 12, I'm focused on 6 to 12 cabins at the same time now, because that's the best use of my time. But focusing on a specific theme. So we have cottages, A-frames. We're working on a treehouse community right now, A-frame community, barn style type of like community as well, where it's like modern contemporary barns. Theme is huge, because I like to say Instagrammable properties, where the property itself is an experience outside of the city that the person is staying in. And it's I like to use once you start following all these social media pages on like cabins and stuff, Instagram will feed you more stuff on that. So anytime anything catches my interest or like my curiosity, I'll screenshot it, and then I'll put it in a folder and be like, oh, could I build like a couple properties based off of this floor plan and blah blah blah. Surprisingly, I use Fiverr for a lot of my my initial architectural design drawings, because I can take these photos and give them to someone on Fiverr for $400 or $500. They can get a general floor plan put together in a couple weeks, and then I take that floor plan to a local architect to get it stamped. And then from there, honestly, my wife helps me with the interior design piece, because I'm really good with the outside. The inside is what I'm terrible about. And then I use Wayfair Professional to honestly, when you get a business Wayfair account, they assign you like and I've actually never talked about this. They give you a free person that's attached to the account that you can, you can tell them, hey, this is the vibe I'm going for inside of the house. And the color scheme, I like to stick to like 2 or 3 colors, and then they'll just feed you like a crap ton of links, and then you can just choose from there based off budget.
Yes, we have.
So that's I just went through my whole design process. Really, I try to keep a really lean team.
Yep.
I don't. Yeah. So.
Yes, we love the Wayfair. We do.
Wayfair Professional.
Yeah, our Wayfair rep, his name is Chad, and we are like so socially connected with that guy at this point. Like, we follow each other on Instagram. Yeah, we're like sending him happy birthday letters.
Right before I got on, like my wife and I just moved into a new house, and like we're furnishing it, and we're still using the Wayfair Professional account. So like I just got off the phone. I was like, hey, can you give me like a discount on the stuff like for the house? So
yes,
it's crazy. Like we've probably saved at least $50,000 at this point.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's just having that business account and the Wayfair Professional who gives you that little something extra. I'm like, oh my gosh, it saves you so much money.
Yeah, it's an interior designer. Like that's what I look at it as.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
As long as you know sort of the feel that you're going for and the colors that you want, you're set.
Yeah, 100%, especially in projects like yours where the exterior is kind of the showstopper. You know, it's like some people will be dealing with like this really crappy outside, and it's like a much heavy lift for the design on the inside to make it make sense. But
absolutely,
especially,
and that's when I say unique properties, like if you don't have any, if you're purchasing and you don't have any control over the outside, the inside is what you have to make unique.
Yep, 1000%. We say that exact same thing when you said Instagrammable Airbnb, that we've coined that term so many times, because Like, yeah, when we were designing almost exclusively for investors in 2020, when we stopped scaling because we were like, oh shit, what's happening with the market? We were doing arbitrage properties. We were almost exclusively designing, and all of them, every single apartment in DFW looks exactly the same. It's like windows, white walls, gray floor, gray countertops, gray cabinets.
Sometimes you gotta go with like a theme, like for each one.
Yeah. So it was like, one, we heavily leaned on Wayfair Professional, but two, it was like, okay, how do we use the brightest, most bold, ridiculous wallpapers and like murals and things like that to just like, for the love of God, try and be different than the 8 million other one bed, one baths online.
I feel like Airbnb brought back wallpaper. Like,
oh my gosh, I'm about to buy some.
My wife wanted to pimp out one of the bathrooms here at the house. And she's like, I'm going to do wallpaper. I was like, what? And she like showed me all the different designs. I was like, oh, I'm going to put these in some of the Airbnbs. It's cool.
Oh yeah. Wallpaper is so big. A friend of ours, Maddie, she does wallpaper in like all of the properties that she's currently working on.
Yeah,
and I'm
like an accent wall or something
gosh,
beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And with it being peel and stick now, even if you're doing arbitrage, you can easily put wallpaper into your units because peel and stick. I didn't even realize they still made normal wallpaper anymore. I thought it was all peel and stick.
They have like entire websites dedicated to it now. Yeah.
Wallpaper is having a moment. I told the investor that I'm partnering with on this big, huge property in Cadillac. I told him this morning, I was like, hey, I'm putting floral wallpaper on the ceiling. I thought he was going to have a stroke. He was like,
yeah.
He's like, you're doing what? Where? Like gave me full reins on the design. And then he's like, I don't know if I trust you anymore. And I'm like, no. It's going to be great. I promise. Just
one thing we've been doing with some unique stuff for the interior stuff for people who are listening that don't have access to doing stuff on the outside or condos, apartments, whatever, is hiring like a local muralist. And to do like a local mural is awesome. That's been huge too. We started doing that.
Yeah, that's definitely a big pull, especially in like the Nashville market or Scottsdale. I know that was like a huge thing for people to do at their properties there, and I think it is expanding into like properties that are outside of those like major destination spots as well. But I think the trend definitely started in like those bachelorette destinations.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, we're about 4 hours from Nashville. Crazy.
Nashville is out of control right now. Okay, so we have another question for you. yeah, everyone's got the pink cowgirl hat. Okay, so I feel like you've kind of covered this already, but for our listeners to make it nice and concise for them, what are the standards that you hold your build properties to make them great short-term rentals?
So, I mean, design's number one, obviously. And then outside of that, I mean, you guys will be surprised that, so like, for me, I know what like good materials are, like in terms of, I'm going to get some like technical terms here, but like a corrugated roof versus a standing seam versus a shingle. All of that, like the difference between like standing seam and corrugated, which corrugated being the cheaper option, is like $10,000 or $20,000 difference. The guest doesn't care about that stuff. They just like it really, they don't care about that stuff. Same thing with the flooring, outside of the durability of it, of how long it's actually going to last. You can go with some of the cheaper floorings as long as the colors match the whole scheme of the house. So like the build and the structure itself, obviously we go with like higher R ratings to help with like R ratings on the installation to help with just the efficiency of the house. But when it comes to the finishes, we honestly don't go crazy expensive on the finishes because we leave the design of the house and then also some of the color choices we choose for the furniture to sort of speak for that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
because the biggest thing you're going to run into is probably when you're developing your own property is like you're going to want to go, because you're doing ground up, you're going to want to go premium everything, and that's a very quick way to blow your budget.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Are the cabins that you're working with, I guess I didn't look too much into this, are you going with standard like 2-bedroom 2 bathrooms, 2-bedroom 1 bathrooms, or do you do bigger, smaller?
It's a mix. It's a mix of everything. So I don't like to go over 3 bedrooms unless if we're purchasing. If we're purchasing, sure, like we did that 5-bedroom one. I don't like to go over 3 bedrooms, and I'll do studios, but usually the studios has so we do the minimum I like to build is a primary with a mother-in-law accessory dwelling unit, and we stick to a bigger property and a smaller property. So the bigger property will probably be anywhere between 800 to 1,400 square foot, and then that smaller property is anywhere between 400 to 800 square foot. So I'm sort of all over the place. I don't like to do 2-person houses. So like I like to do a minimum of 4, so a studio, king bed, with a pull-out couch is the minimum I like to do.
That makes a lot of sense. And you bring up a really, really good point about the material choices that you're using for these properties, because we've gotten into kind of a period where we're doing quite a few one-on-one consultations with brand new Airbnb hosts. And so we're dealing with people who are purchasing, not building, right? They're in a rehab phase. And the first thing that they want to do when they get into this new house is rip out all the old finishes and put in new finishes. And
Right.
it's the first thing that I tell them is I'm like, look, when you are looking at where you're spending your budget, you need to be spending that budget on things that have an ROI attached to it. Your tan floor versus the current like brown floor is not something that has an ROI attached to it. Your hot tub versus no hot tub is something that has an ROI attached to it. So when you're looking at that specific 10 grand, get the hot tub, don't get the new floors.
Yeah, get the $5,000 hot tub compared to the $5,000 floor for sure.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's that mentality of like, okay, well, you know, to them, to people who are new, they're like, okay, well, I want a luxury clientele, so I have to have all these premium materials and finishes. And it's just not the case. It really is about,
Eventually.
yeah.
Like if you're just starting, probably not.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So you brought up a super good point there that I think that a lot of people will blow their budget on the materials before they even get into the finishings, and then all of a sudden the finishings are or the furnishings are crap, and then the thing that people are actually sitting on and actually laying on and actually using is like so subpar compared to the countertop that they chose or the flooring they chose. And so we
For
see
sure.
people all the time getting into that kind of pickle.
Yeah, and like you
Yeah,
said,
no,
like
absolutely.
it's not like a right, like eventually you can do that stuff. Maybe you take the profits, and if you're looking to add value to the home because you intend to sell it down the road, absolutely do those things later on. But initially, your guests they're not going to tell the difference between the fact that there's a brown floor and a tan floor, as long as it's a durable floor and it looks okay.
There is a sweet spot, like in terms of developing of the 1, 2, 3 bedroom type houses. I feel like people get it doesn't. What I've realized, that maybe it's just market specific, is like the luxury properties don't correlate to more revenue. They will, like in terms of average daily rate and stuff, but it's not like, okay, this is an 800 square foot property and this is a 1,600 square foot property, it's going to make twice as much. That's not the case. It even in heads and beds, a lot of times it doesn't correlate directly. Like my A-frame that can sleep 6 people and my log cabin that can sleep 14 people, the average daily rate's not necessarily double the amount. So there is a sweet spot of, like, I would say 4 to 6 people in a property if you're developing.
Really? That's super interesting.
And again, that might be market specific. So.
Right. Yeah. I think, you know, we've paid really, really close attention these last few months to anything that sleeps above 10. Because here in Michigan, it's like there seems to be just this surplus of houses that are like holding 6 to 8 people, right? And so the competition levels are just so low for anything that sleeps above 10 that you could offer the worst product in the world, but if you can get 20 people in there,
oh yeah, so that's an example of being market specific for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So tell us about this course that you have releasing that you mentioned at the beginning. Tell us why you decided to make it, what it contains, who you're targeting. Give us the rundown.
Yeah, so so where it came from was I'm a writer for Bigger Pocket short-term rental content. I'm like one of 4 writers that specifically just do their short-term rental blog posts. And I started getting a lot of people, when I do the podcast, I do a lot, I get a lot of investors that are willing to put up 100,000, 200, 300,000. What I realized with the Bigger Pocket stuff is a lot of that community is a little bit newer. And so they started asking, I got a lot of people reaching out to me, which I was super, super grateful for, about just, hey, can I get like 30 minutes of your time, an hour of your time? Because I have a couple questions. And it got to a point where I just couldn't handle that many calls, especially just like donating my time, like 10, 20 hours a week. It got to, I was like, okay, I'm done. But I was like, what's the best way to serve that community, where people who are just coming up and want to do this themselves, or maybe they have their own short-term rentals, but they were in the position I was when I first started, where they can't find anything right now. So that's why I started it. And then another thing is I essentially started the course that I wish I had when I wish I had 6 years ago when I started. So that's why I started the course, was for people who are just, I feel like there's a huge push towards these unique rentals right now, especially with Airbnb completely redesigning their website this summer. It's literally, Airbnb itself is catered towards short, like unique stays now. All the tabs are unique stays, A-frames, cabins, the OMG category, everything. So that's why I created the course. So it's a short-term rental development course. start to finish, everything you need to know, what type of property to choose, what type of market to choose, how to choose a market. You could start in your backyard, which is what I talk about. I like to say anyone is within a market. I'm telling the students, and it's said in the course, that think of a place where people like to vacation in your area. That people take a weekend vacation, whether it be an extended vacation. Those little pockets and those little markets exist everywhere now. Airbnb and VRBO has really opened up those like sort of like pockets of like different markets and stuff. Sort of just teaching off the course now, but yeah, that's essentially why I created it, was just for the people who are just interested in getting into the short-term rental stuff. Maybe they don't even know that's an option, but I mean, that's how I started.
Yeah. Does it mainly focus on ground up construction, or does it kind of include everything?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, so if you're coming in at the ground level and have no money, it talks about glamping, tiny houses on wheels. Maybe you're just starting out. Maybe you do have. I talked to a student that had a piece of land donated to them, but they had no money. So we worked on like financing and how to use that money as collateral. But we also talk about some of the case studies of like the rehab project that I've done and stuff like that. So there's different ground levels. Maybe you live in a pretty rural area where you can build an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard. I've seen a lot of people do that just to start in the development piece. So it really, there's 120 videos. It took me 6 months to put together, 6 months of like practically full-time work.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like the Bible. I like to think of it as like the Bible. And then I tried to create the course that like it could be a complement to a lot of short-term rental operators that if they have their own content, I didn't want to compete with them. There is a tiny management piece, that a tiny management course at the end of just the different tools I use to manage my property after as well.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, we have a small short-term rental 101 course as well. And we've, talked to people all over the place about courses that they've created previous to us creating ours. And, on social media, it's like the second you release a course and you like start advertising it, there's like this real cringy, like schemy thing that people think you're doing. They're like, oh, great, another course. There's like this ick to it, which we don't understand, right? We're like, why?
I've probably I pay my one-on-one mentor like 30 grand a year. I probably spent 50 grand a year on courses. Like that's not me. So
yeah. And it's incredible to me that people feel that way about courses, because I'm like, okay, we're up in arms about student loan debt where you just paid 6 figures to go to school to learn something that, is or isn't relevant. And people don't want to pay, couple $1,000 for something that literally could flip their lives upside down.
Yeah, it's like, here's this course that costs $1,000 that will save. If I had that course when I started this course, like I probably would have saved 300 grand by applying everything. It's you're essentially purchasing all the mistakes that someone has made and fixed over the course of whatever time.
That is exactly what we say all the time. It's literally the course that we wish we had when we started.
Yeah. And the course has like a group coaching piece to it too. Like once a month, like I get on the calls and stuff and answer questions, a support piece. There's workbooks, templates, everything, literally everything.
That's awesome. That's very
in-depth.
Yep.
Yeah. Short-term rental 101 University is what Alex has just created. Sure. That's amazing. So, well, as we wrap up here, where can people find you and where can people find more information about this course?
Yeah, you can go directly to my, so the websites are, the course is actually launching tomorrow, September 15th. But for people who are listening to this, I don't know when this is going to be posting, but just on alexjarbo.com, just my personal site, ALEXJARBO, almost misspelled my own name, .com. And there's a little tab up there where you can just enter in for the master class, and then it'll take you through the whole sales process and everything. But yeah, my personal website also has like where like my investing, like my Sargon Investments is at, and then also some of the interviews I've done. I have a free YouTube channel as well that I just cover some of the stuff that I teach as well.
Beautiful. Well, as always, we will link everything below. So if you are listening to this, go to our bio if you want to find it as well. We will have a link there so you can just click on it and it'll take you there. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on this show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the development side. That is like a 2 to 3 year goal out for me. So I might be knocking at your door whether I move to North Carolina or whether I need some help in development. And for our listeners, as always, thank you for joining us. Emily, you want to plug where they can find us?
Yes. So we just rebranded our website. It is now the Karwells, or the Karwells.space is where it is. And then we are at the Karwells on all social media platforms. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again, Alex. Thank you to our listeners, and we will catch y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.